Okay, let's continue working on this little spreadsheet that we started in the previous video. Before we do that though, and I know I've pointed this out in earlier videos, but I want to point it out again. What if you are working on a spreadsheet and all of a sudden your cat walks across your keyboard and all of a sudden everything's gone and you're like, uh-oh, what happened? I don't know what I did. Well, don't worry about it. Just go up to the undo button and just back up a few steps. Everything's good again. So, all right, let's go ahead and continue working on this. I'm going to show you some things that are very, very useful, and I'm going to show you some things that are kind of just nice too for how we present a spreadsheet. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and say this is the data for January. Okay, for January. And what I want to do here is I want to do data for February, March. I want to do it for the first 6 months of the year. Okay. So what I can do is, instead of typing all this in there, I can highlight that range right there, and I can pull this over as far as I want to, and you can see how far it's going to go. You can see the title. Now I could pull this clear over for the full year, and it would have each month there. But I only want to do the first 6 months, so I'm going to go ahead and highlight these and delete them. Bye-bye. Now, one thing you have to do though is like if I just tried to pull over January, well, that would work. Sometimes it does. Sometimes you have to have a pattern that Excel can recognize. January, February, March. I usually give it 3 months and then pull that over, and then that Excel has figured out, okay, this is going to be monthly columns or whatever. So, okay, so let's have these 6 months here. Now, I want to go ahead and pull this data over. Now, what do I mean by that? That means I'm going to basically copy these numbers and this formula. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is highlight this range. And again, I hope you're playing with Excel while you're watching this video, because the way you learn these programs is just to kind of, play around with them. Okay. You're not gonna erase the memory on your hard drive. You're not gonna do any harm. So just play around with it. Okay. Now let's go ahead and pull. Once that data is highlighted, I'm going to go ahead and just pull that over. I'm going to see that little lower right thing. See how my cursor turns from that plus sign right there to one like that. If I pull that over, it pulled over all that data. Okay, isn't that awesome? Now let's change some of these numbers. Okay, and what you can see is that the totals at the bottom, as I change these numbers, are changing. Isn't that a beautiful thing? That's the whole reason we're doing this. We're doing this on a spreadsheet in Excel, is so that as we change things, these bottom numbers change. Now let's go over to that total column that we set up in the previous video. I have my cursor right there, and you can always look to see what is in that cell. This is the sum of C4 to C8. Now when we pulled that over, look to see what the formula is in the D column. It adjusted it to the sum of D4 to D8, and this is the sum of E4 to E8. Okay, it's smart enough to know that we don't want this total to be January's contents, and we don't want March total to be January's contents. We want each total to be the total of the data above it. So it adjusted that column letter to us. Isn't that nice of it? Okay, so this is the beautiful thing, is that you can change your data and everything that you have set up will change. Okay, now first of all, let's look at some things here that let's make this a little more user friendly. Okay, first of all, I don't like to have lines that are not labeled. So what is this? Well, this is total expense. Okay, I can go ahead and abbreviate total expense. Now, just something that's kind of nice. See that total expense? Sometimes I kind of like to have that, since it's a subtotal, I want it to look a little different. So what I might do is put my cursor in that box and then go up to, see these two boxes? This is increase indent and decrease indent. See how if I push that, it moves over? I can move it back to the left. I can move it to the right. I'm going to put it there. I just think that looks a little nicer for the person who's going to be looking at this data. Okay. Another thing I can do, remember how we underlined these by, and actually what I did is I think I clicked on this and, oh, I know what we did. We underlined that number, and then when we pulled that data over, that underline went with it. Okay. I could have done this as well. I could have highlighted that row and then pushed underline. But look what I'm going to do here. I'm going to highlight this row. I'm going to go up to the underline button up here, but there's a little pull down menu. I'm going to do a double underline there. Isn't that nifty? Actually, I don't want that. I don't want a double underline under the title. So I'm going to highlight that one cell and unclick it. You with me? Looks a little nicer, doesn't it? Let's see if we can work with these month titles here. Okay. Well, first of all, I'll tell you one thing. I don't like how the January is over to the left and the numbers are to the right. Okay. By default, numbers always do a right align. They go to the rightmost part of the cells, and titles do a left align. But I just think that looks kind of cockamamie. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this whole row by clicking on the 3, and I'm going to go up here to center. I'm going to push center and you'll see those. See how that adjusted? Okay. Now while that row is still highlighted, I'm also going to go back to my underline. I don't want to double underline it, but I want to underline it. So I'm going to underline it. And now those titles have an underline. And while I'm up there, I'm actually going to push, what does that mean? That means bold. I'm going to push bold. And now, I think it's just looking a little bit nicer. Okay? One thing I don't like is I don't like how some columns are wide because it has a long month title. Other ones are short because they have a short month title. So what I do is this. I want it to look uniform. So I'm going to click right there so the whole spreadsheet is highlighted. And then I usually go to a column, and I usually go to the one that has the longest title in it. And I'm going to adjust it. Okay. And notice how everything adjusts with it. Okay. Now if I would have adjusted May, it would have looked good for May, but well, that doesn't look too bad, but I think that looks a little too crowded for me. So I'm going to make those a little wider. But now they're all the same. All the numbers are the same. And I might just go back to that one and widen it a little bit. Okay. A little more. Okay. So this is a nice little spreadsheet we have here. Some other things that you could do that are kind of fun is if you wanted to, you could highlight those titles and then go up to here and put a fill color, yellow, in there. Or if you didn't like the yellow, you could put blue or whatever you wanted. Okay. Or what you could do is highlight those titles. Maybe you don't want a background fill, but you want the fonts to change color. Maybe we want them to be blue. Okay. So that's kind of cool, isn't it? Another thing sometimes I will do is okay, let's do this. Sometimes what I like to do is I don't want to put dollar signs everywhere, but sometimes I like to put dollar signs on the top and the bottom rows of my little financial statements. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. Now I can tell you what it's going to do. As soon as I push this dollar, it's going to by default go to 2 decimal places again, which I don't want. Let me do that and I'll show you. Now this is kind of a spreadsheet 101 sort of a tip. You don't want some numbers to have 2 decimal places and other numbers to have none. It just looks bad. It's confusing for the reader. So while that's highlighted, I'm going to go back to that decreased decimal. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and put dollar signs on the bottom. I'm going to push dollar, but then I'm going to decrease those decimals out of there. Okay. What we have here is a nice little spreadsheet. And you can title this up here and just say Dave Krug's monthly expenses. Okay. By the way, let's say I need another row. Go over here, do a right click, insert. It'll add another row. Okay. If I don't want that column, I can click up there, do a right click on my mouse, and delete. Okay. But I have Dave's monthly expenses for January through June. Okay. And let's go ahead and make that look a little nicer. Let's go ahead and make that bold. And I might even give that a little background. Doesn't that look nice and pretty? Okay. So that is the example of a spreadsheet. There are other things you can do. I encourage you to play around with some of these other things. You'll see that Excel has a lot of ribbons. For these very basic stuff that I'm teaching you, I just want you to stay on the home ribbon. Okay? At least as where we are right now in our learning. So, thanks.